So welcome everybody to another new episode of Mover Podcasts. We're excited to have the founder of one of Orange County's fastest growing moving companies, Noah Fenton of Fenton Moving. Noah, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Andrew. Good to be here. Excited.
Fabulous. So we go through a little bit to learn about you, starting things off. Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Middleburg, Virginia, a little town outside of DC. It's a rural area and spent most of my life there. The first 20 years or so, I did do a lot of traveling as well. I spent some time in New Zealand and I went to a couple different schools in the area of Virginia growing up, but most of my time was spent in this little rural town. So I didn't have too much experience with big cities and the like before getting into my early 20s. And
Wow.
yeah,
So,
so college and moving out to California, all that sort of stuff.
So you went to New Zealand. Was that just travelled for a short time, or was this a long stay, or how long were you there?
Yeah, so I was in New Zealand for 7 months, all in all. So not full time living there for too long, but enough time to travel around the whole country and see the North and the South Island. And it was really just an opportunity to get out, experience a different place, do
Yeah.
yeah, some camping, some nature. That's some of the stuff that I'm big into.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that. That would have been some experience. What prompted you to choose New Zealand? It was very open and remote, or what was it?
Yeah, I think there's a couple options for me when I'm looking to travel abroad. I can either look into the human culture of the world. So I think for me, places would like that would be Paris or Europe has a lot of
Hmm.
history. And places like New Zealand are more of the natural culture. So
Fascinating.
yeah, beautiful landscapes, etc.
And you had a great time. And a great learning experience.
Yeah, I did. I did. It was really cool. I think it's good to get that experience and learn about different places. I think everything like that is just a little bit more knowledge for me.
Yeah, that's a fabulous thing to do. So you said you went to college. Did you also go to college in Virginia?
Yeah, so I did. I didn't go too far away. I went to a small liberal arts college called the University of Richmond
Hmm.
in Richmond, Virginia. And I spent my 4 years there getting a degree in business administration with concentrations in finance and management.
Okay.
So a lot of classes with investments and finance, but also I did this entrepreneurial track where I did management classes and then did some mock portfolios and mock projects where we try out our business ideas and see how viable they are.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Now, that was so in Richmond, you were you grew up, as you said, in a small rural community. How far away was Richmond from there?
It's about 2.5 hours away
Okay.
from the north part of Virginia down to the middle.
But it was, and I'm assuming, I guess, that Richmond was a bigger population than where you grew up in the rural area.
Yeah, I would say that part of the answer to that would be that the university was closed off from the city for the most part. It was a
Yep.
lot of classes and a lot of interacting with other students. So
Yep.
I guess one of the regrets I would have is not getting out into the city more. But Richmond
Yeah. Yeah.
itself, all in all, with the suburbs, is pretty large. It's about 1.5 million people.
Yeah. And what a pretty, as a pretty awesome experience to have all those practical training. Was there anything you took away from that still today?
Yeah, absolutely. It was good to be in a competitive environment with other people my age trying to excel and
Yep.
watching their passion
Mm-hmm.
for trying to create businesses and at the end of the day create a career, learn to make money
Mm-hmm.
by what we do. So I learned a lot from that. I did two mock businesses. One of them I've played tennis my whole life and was in competitive tennis. So one of the mock businesses was actually a racket restringing service that we put into, yeah, we put that into effect in Richmond a little bit, and we were working on like little pop-up places where people could drop off their rackets remotely, and then we would come in at the end of the day, pick up the 10 rackets, restring them, bring them back to the court so they could pick them up kind of near public courts.
That's pretty cool now. And you actually did string the rackets.
I did string some rackets. I mean, the way that it went growing up, I was at clubs and that sort of thing, and it can
Mm-hmm.
seem a little excessive the prices they charge at clubs. And I know that a lot of public courts and people that use those public courts maybe can't afford that. So we were
Yeah.
thinking more in a reasonable price range, doing it large scale, scaling it, being able to make it possible that way, and also be able to help people.
Yeah, that's a fabulous business. How did you find that once you actually started doing it? Was it well received? What was one of the main challenges you saw out of that?
Yeah, so I will say that the professor was pretty critical
Mm-hmm.
of, and in a good way. I mean, I think it's necessary, but critical of all of our projects. So for me, what I excel at is getting out and just doing the
Mm-hmm.
service that we're trying to do,
Right.
interacting with people, doing the physical work. A lot of what he emphasized was the back work. Like, does the finances make sense 6 months down the road? What's
Right.
the growth going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and all those questions, I will say it was a little discouraging.
Yeah.
And if I learned anything from that, I actually lean more into when I'm trying out an idea or seeing if it's going to work, just doing it,
Yes.
not sitting behind the paper so much and running numbers and
Yeah. Yeah.
questioning and double guessing or
Yep.
whatever it is, just getting out, trying it and seeing how it feels.
And was that pretty, was that pretty interesting, stringing all those rackets? Did you learn something yourself doing all this out of that process? Was there a real need in the market? Was there anything you learned doing it?
Yeah, so I would say that this was not a huge priority in my life at the time,
Yep.
if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So using it as kind of a side project, it was somewhat successful, but I wasn't in that moment really trying
Yeah.
to turn it into something big,
Yeah.
which I think with any small business, it's got to be a hundred
Yes.
percent all day for the
Yep.
first couple years.
Makes a lot of sense. So, what prompted you, or why did you decide? You're in Virginia. You've got this just a great practical training program with this university. You've gone in. You like competitive tennis. I completely understand that. And then you're learning about starting a business, and then you utilized your background in tennis. So, what made you, or why did you move out to California?
Yeah, so I graduated from Richmond with this degree. Most of my classmates, friends that I had made were getting into the finance sector. So things like investment banking and portfolio analysis for larger companies, like really good companies. It's a good business school. They send people
Hmm.
to Goldman Sachs and KPMG and different accounting firms that are really successful. But for me, I knew in that moment, and it kind of goes along with the New Zealand mention that we
Hmm.
had. It wasn't time for me to kind of join that bigger corporate world and get behind a desk and
Yep.
grind like that for however many hours a day, usually a lot in the
Right.
beginning.
Right. So,
So some things were up in the air. I decided to visit a friend that was living in Newport Beach, California, spent some time here, and obviously it's a beautiful place.
hmm
So that's kind of what started it.
So you visited Newport Beach with a mate that was out there, and you're out there and you're saying, I really like this city. I could live here.
Exactly.
And I don't want to be working in the finance sector locked in behind a desk. I'm more somebody that needs to be out and about, but I want to utilize this business background.
Exactly.
And then, so I guess follow on from that is you may say, I'm going to go out to Newport. I love it here. Let's give it a go. Then something prompted you to consider the moving business. What was that?
Yeah, so it's kind of an interesting story given what we just talked about. I was so averse to getting behind a desk at the time that I just started working for a local moving company.
Huh?
And yeah, so it started out as pure on the job hourly pay moving for people in Orange County. And that's what I did for about 9 months. And I will say, just as mentioned with that, I really enjoyed it.
Really?
I really enjoyed it. Seeing new places in Orange County, meeting people, seeing beautiful homes. And I've always been big into exercise. And that's one of the big things that I get from actually moving.
Well, I was thinking about that. So you've got the background with tennis, which is a competitive cardio exercise, but moving would be, I think, and I don't know, obviously I haven't done professional moving, but I'm thinking that you've got a lot more, not necessarily physical exertion, but more uh, stress on weight type, heavy type items is what I'm thinking of. Did you find that, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of the friends that I have today, other owners of companies and employees and all that, it takes a special type of person to be willing. And I'm not saying that it's harder than anything else, but it takes a special type of person to be willing to do that sort of job, pick up 10,000 pounds over the course of an 8 hour day or something
Yeah.
like that. So it's definitely heavy on the body. And it just, yeah, some people love it and some people really don't.
Yeah, and what did you do? But you were loving it after 9 months. You said, I really enjoyed that. How did you, there must have been some things that you'd learned along the way and you had been very careful of to prevent injury with these heavy items.
Yeah, absolutely. I've worked out my whole life and it was intensive for tennis. The main things are just going to be protecting the back,
Yep.
watching the knees,
Yes.
all that sort of things. Yeah, because if we don't, it can be a pretty short career, 2 years in and the back's giving out every day, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. So now that you've founding Fenton Moving, I'll get into some other questions about this as well, but you've got guys that come on with you, team. Uh, do you have some specific training you give them to prevent injury or how to handle goods to prevent damage?
Yeah, so what we do today is I meet with a guy always and do a little interview with them and feel it out and see if they'd be a good fit. And we
Yes,
only do hiring through friends. So I
that's
don't do any sort of hiring from third party platforms.
that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's all referrals, friend to friend. That's how I know I can really trust these guys. And yeah, so most of our training is going to be just with each other. So what have we learned, and then sharing little tips. I mean, at this point, I've been physically moving. I'm still on jobs today, not as frequently anymore for sure, but I enjoy it and I like hanging out and getting on the jobs with the guys. So 3.5 years in, I've learned a lot of small tips. And
No, that's fabulous.
yeah, and a lot of our guys have at least years of experience.
Yeah, no, this is really good. What an education. So, as founder of Fenton Moving, you've moved people from all walks of life. Can you think of any moving experiences that stand out over these years now?
Yeah, so I would say sadly, mostly the horror stories are the ones that stick out the most.
Yep.
And so that's going to be like we walk into somebody's house and there's open cardboard boxes and pizza on the floor.
Oh
And
God.
and maybe animal hair and other things all over the place. So I have some of those in mind, and those aren't awesome to talk about, but I've also seen some really beautiful houses and met some really kind people.
Yeah. So the people part of the enjoyment of what you're doing is also meeting the people then.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's good. I mean, like I would say that to a certain extent, growing up, my world was boxed in certain ways, right?
Hmm.
Growing up in a rural area and then
Yep.
going to college, but now I get to go meet people from like you said, all walks of life and get to see like the things that people do, talk to them
Yeah.
about what they do for work and get a feel for just like how kind a lot of people
Yeah.
can be.
That's fabulous. So, with the, going to the horror stories a little bit, not to go dark, but when you have these horror stories where people have got stuff everywhere and they're leaving pizza and it's on the floor and it's a real mess, what do you do to make the move mitigate? Is there anything you do that you learn to mitigate to make the move more efficient, even though they're inefficient?
Yeah, so before long, full honesty is that in the beginning, starting a business like this, we'll take what we can get, right? So
Right.
in the beginning, I'm doing any job that I can.
Yes.
But once we get stable and people understand how quality of service we provide, we start to have some power there, maybe
Yes.
for
Yes.
lack of a better word.
Yep.
So before long, I realized that we require certain working conditions. So I have the talk with clients as we're booking, and it's kind of part of our contract that the
Yes.
working environment needs to be reasonable for us
Yep.
to actually do the job. And if it's not,
Makes a lot of sense.
yeah, it's a lot like at a restaurant, they reserve the right to
Yep.
serve certain people. We reserve the right to not work at a certain house.
That's perfect. Makes a lot of sense. So now, getting on to a logical follow-on to that, um, there's been a fair bit of news out there, as you maybe see, particularly, I think particularly lately since the Corona days, maybe because moving has been so active, but there's a lot of news about what I'd say is shady moving schemes. Can you, have you, I'm assuming you've seen a lot of this. Can you tell us what's happening here?
Yeah, so if I can have a minute or two on that
Yeah.
answer, this is something I talk about often with people, and I'll give a quick overview breakdown of the moving industry in general.
Yes.
Moving, we
Please.
move, we move a lot of value every day in
Mhm.
people's homes,
Mhm.
and part of moving, just how it is that occasionally we're not perfect, things are going to break, that sort of thing. So
Right.
with moving comes a certain amount of damages. Because of that, there's a lot of insurance involved, and insurance is very expensive.
Mhm.
So the actual barrier to entry with moving is really high, and I think for that reason it can be not so appealing to a lot of business owners that are looking
Right.
to find, what industry am I going to go into?
Right.
Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of awesome moving companies out there, and that's the
Right.
truth.
Yes.
But it also leaves space for some quote unquote shadier people
Yep.
to step into an industry where they can feel they can make a lot of money, that sort of thing.
So it opens it up because you're saying there is limited barriers to entry.
Yes, I would say that it's not the most appealing industry to get into every time for
Yes.
somebody with a
Yeah.
lot of funding or something like that.
Yeah. It's not. We've got other things that are more sexy, glamorous, so to speak.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And with these companies, are there things that these, let's say, the shadier companies are doing that would be things that you would say to someone, just watch out for if somebody says this? Is there anything that comes to mind if a moving company says something to a customer wherever they are, even if it's not a move for you, just for a customer that might be wherever? Is there something that you would say, hey, this is a red flag, you want to be careful with this moving company?
I would watch out for any hidden charges, any hidden fees, but I think that the biggest thing I would recommend to anybody is to check reviews, right? I mean, Move
Yes.
is awesome because you know all of us personally and we've been referred to you one way or
Thank
the
you.
other. So
Hmm.
vetting, right?
Yes.
And it's important. It's really important to have that connection where it's a positive referral and there's past experiences to go on.
Yep.
Because if somebody's not on the internet and their reviews aren't apparent and very consistently good, that's
Yes.
a huge red flag. And it is. I mean, it's common for companies to hold people's items in their trucks until they get more money from them. And
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, we go.
Yeah, I mean, it's out there for sure. I would say it is very easy to avoid as long as there's vetting involved and
Yes.
referrals and that sort of thing.
No, that's fabulous tip there. So thanks for that. Um, what would you suggest for a residence that's planning to move, that if there's something that there's something they're gonna look out for from the moving company, but what would you say would be something they should uh, be careful of or watch out for in their own preparation? Is it
Mm.
the parking for the trucks? What would be some of the main things you'd say? Be careful of this so that you can be best prepared as possible.
Yeah, so I would say if the total value of the move is something that's important to the client, that's probably the biggest thing that we run into.
Right.
And if that's important, then preparation as far as packing items go
Mm-hmm.
is the very best thing that a client can do. So if we're
Yep.
showing up to a home and there's loose items and everything isn't as consolidated as possible, and
Mm-hmm.
guys that are really strong and can carry big pieces all in one go are picking up little items one at a time and walking them, to the truck and back and walking to the truck and back. That's how the hourly can increase or how things can become more expensive if it's not
Yep.
consolidated.
Perfect. So, there's been a lot of changes, I think, in the moving industry, really, over the past several years, but looking just over the last 12 months since COVID came along, what would you say are the most significant changes you've seen?
Hmm. Yeah, fortunately, when COVID came around, right, I think a lot of businesses were up in the air as far as how it was going to affect them. We had
Hmm.
about a 2 week lull, and then people have to move, so we kept on as we had been. It wasn't a huge drop, but what has happened and has been really significant is that it seems everybody's moving out of populated areas and into more rural areas. So out of California, out of
Hmm.
LA, out of San Diego, out of Orange County, and we've done a lot of moves to Nevada or Texas or Colorado, areas that aren't so populated. And I think that's been the biggest change.
That's fascinating to see that and to hear that. We says you read a lot about people doing all these things and then statistics contradict themselves, but you've been on the ground and witnessing this now. And
Yeah,
you can say in the moves that you've actively been a part of, you are yourself seeing a significant move of moving more so than normal, moving out of the densely populated cities and into more remote locations.
definitely more than normal. And yeah, we've actually changed some of our strategies to meet that demand. And I also know just from being in the industry that U-Haul is starving as far as trucks in California right now. They can't keep them around. It's
No kidding.
yeah, they really don't have any anymore, and it's because they've all gone to Texas or Nevada, like I was talking about.
Wow. So there's that many. So now they're going to have a hard time picking, you're going to have a hard time finding a U-Haul in California.
Yeah, I think they're having to work through that problem right now.
Wow. There's some interesting feedback. Noah, this has been absolutely fabulous. And I would also love to probably in the future, we might have some more specific, directly moving questions. But I think this was a great insight into yourself, your background, the moving industry, and just firsthand, straightforward, down and dirty truth about what you need to do and what need to be aware of. So really, this is fabulous. Um, for our listeners, thank you, everybody. Please subscribe to our podcast and find us on Instagram at Mover Inc. That's MUVAINC. You can also reach out to Noah Fenton with questions at Fenton Moving at gmail.com. That's FentonMoving at gmail.com. And until then, thanks for tuning in. Thank you, Noah. See you next time. And to everybody out there, keep moving. Have a great day.